In the 1800s a lot of dentures were made using the teeth of dead soldiers. What are some deeply unsettling facts that you know are askreddit? If a hamster manages to get its hands on your body if you are dead, it will use chunks of your skin, hair and other stuff to make a nest, leaving a very bloody and messy scene behind. In 1933, a doctor named Karl Tanzler raided the tomb of a female patient with whom he'd become obsessed and stole her body. He lived with the corpse for 7 years. As the body fell apart, he attached the corpse's bones together with wire and coat hangers, and fitted the face with glass eyes. He was only caught when someone saw him dancing with the corpse in front of an open window. Hey, how about we ditch this musty looking mausoleum and head back to my place? All whales eventually lose the energy to surface for oxygen, so they basically just sink and drown. 21-year-old girl from South Carolina had a psychotic episode after using meth, pulled both of her eyes out and crushed them in her hands because she thought she needed to in order to save the world. I believe people saw it happen. Edit. Typo 2 men were slain with a samurai sword in my hometown a couple months ago. The sword swinger believed he was killing werewolves on the full moon. There was a lot of meth involved. All 3 dudes were in their 60s. Fucking wild. After the bombing of Hiroshima, black rain that contained radioactive material fell, and many didn't realize it until it was too late. Also, according to my Japanese professor, they didn't even have a word for the atomic bomb at the time. I unfortunately can't remember what she said they called it instead. Paradoxical undressing. It happens during the last stages of hypothermia as your nerves are damaged. The person removes all of their clothing in freezing temperatures because they feel irrationally hot. Tumors can grow teeth. Yep, they are called teratomas, and can even form hair, skin, some cases report eyes, and one that I heard developed brain cells. Really creepy. Ooh, yeah. I learned about these in my stem cells course from college. There was a case of a young woman gradually losing brain function and going comatose. Doctors found out that she had a teratoma on one of her ovaries. I think it's been a while since I took the class, and the teratoma contained the woman's own brain cells. Because of the location and the other cells within the teratoma, her immune system freaked the hell out and labeled those teratoma brain cells as foreign and attacked them, along with the woman's actual brain cells, leading to the coma. Veteran criminals in the gulags would recruit naive prisoners for their escape attempts called cows for the sole purpose of eating them when they ran out of food in the Siberian wilderness. Cadmium poisoning is so horrible the name in Japanese literally translates to it hurts. Cadmium poisoning can cause your bones to literally soften. Also it can cause kidney lung disease, chills, muscle aches, hair loss, and fever. Sunflower seeds absorb cadmium from the ground and eating them excessively can drastically increase your exposure. A friend sent me an article about it because I was going through a 6-pound box of sunflower seeds every other month. As a teenager used to take stuff apart a lot, still do, but now I know what I'm doing. Once opened up a very old TV we found and kept going until I pulled out the phosphor screen, which evidently contains cadmium. The coating had dry rotted or something and promptly turned to a fine dust and flew everywhere. My friend who was helping me was fine. I on the other hand fell ill the next day with cadmium blues. Imagine the worst flu you've ever had, times 10, and it feels like your blood has broken glass in it. I recovered in about 2 weeks and the general consensus is I shouldn't have any long-term effects since it was only acute exposure, but holy shit people, avoid cadmium. In the Battle of Verdun, over 1 million artillery shells were fired onto a 19-mile wide stretch of land in the first 12 hours. If you were lucky enough to survive until then, the sound alone was enough to drive you insane. Of the 800,000 casualties at Verdun, an estimated 70% were caused by artillery. The Germans launched 2 million shells during their opening bombardment, more than in any engagement in history to that point, and the two sides eventually fired between 40 and 60 million shells over the next 10 months. That's insane. Edit. Source. https:// www.history.com/news/10-things-yo-may-not-know-about-the-battle-of verdun. Edit 2. Pasting from question below according to the source I found. Here is what that adds up to. Battle dates: the 21st of February 1916 to the 18th of December 1916 equals 301 days or 7,224 hours. Opening bombardment of 2M shells followed by 40 M60M fired by both sides throughout the war equals 52 million shells. Estimated 173,000 shells fired per day, on average 7,198 shells per hour, 120 shells per minute. I'm not very knowledgeable on the subject, but I'd assume these are fired in waves, which makes those numbers so much worse. I'm picturing waves of non-stop bombings followed by silence, then more waves. I visited there in 2005. The ground, after 100 years, still looks like the moon ground. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/mummy_brown. Mummy brown is a paint partially made up of ground up Egyptian mummies. There are paintings made of dead people. Adding on to this, besides mummy brown or Egyptian brown, we used to eat mummies because of their supposed medical properties. That's why there are so few of them left. Who the fuck is we? You got a mouse in your pocket. An injury to the brain can turn you into a completely different person, as well as removing your ability to comprehend that it did. It doesn't even have to be a particularly bad one either, it just has to hit the right part of your brain. I was thinking about Michael Schumacher recently and this came to mind. My dad had brain surgery for a tumor and his personality changed immediately. He lost all his social rules and became the friendly, joking, gregarious salesman he'd always been at work, but without any of the depth of personality. He remembered everything, and still did research for almost a year after that, but his social rules and any kind of deep personality were just gone. Doctor called it compensating for the loss by filling in with the salesman bullshit, and that's a very salesman thing to do. I've been in sales for 35 years and know the drill. It was hard on mom to take care of him because, as she said, this is not my husband, this is the salesman people see when he's away from me. Shit eventually went to more normal brain cancer sickness and he eventually passed after a year. It was so weird to watch and know that there was a whole part of him that the surgeon scooped out that day. I'm sorry for your loss, friend. My dad had a massive heart attack, 1 stroke, 3 of his heart died, and while he was deprived of oxygen we think he lost part of his brain function because he was never the same after, personality wise. He went from sarcastic and funny to sarcastic and mean. It was just an overnight change. I hope you've been able to make peace with your loss and have fond memories of the man he was as well as the man he became. Loving someone who changes like that is hard. I also hope your mother has been able to make peace with her loss as well. Wishing you and your family the absolute best. The astonishing fatality rates that can be found in so many battles in the First World War weren't accidents or unfortunate byproducts of the technology, they were factored into the battle plans. By the nature of attritional warfare, it was calculated how many men would be lost every week and commanders drew up enough reinforcements to replace them. This was called normal wastage. I remember reading about the German plan at Verdun. The idea was to attack a target the French couldn't afford to abandon and force them to throw more and more men into the meat grinder to hopefully deplete the French army. It almost worked too. Some regiments of the French army reported an over 100% casualty rate. Edit. I'm gonna chuck this here since so many people are asking. It's possible for the casualty rate to be over 100% because when men die or become wounded they get replaced to keep the unit at full strength, and if those men become casualties as well, it's possible for a unit of say 1000 men to suffer 1200 casualties over a particularly long and bloody battle like Verdun. Japan did some horrible experiments on people during World War II. Unit 731. Vivisection, shattering people's frostbitten limbs, biological warfare, etc. It's all quite horrific and don't recommend anyone without a stomach for horror to read about it. Also, after the war, The people who ran it were never tried as war criminals because the US decided to keep them and their research under wraps so that they could get a hand up on the Soviets. People that are good at murder do actually get away with it. My best friend of 20 years turned out to be a child molester and none of us knew until my other friend's daughter came forward having been a victim. Found that out months ago. Still not okay. Now none of my friends talk. Update. I have to go through everyone's comments but it sounds like we all are fucked up. All we can do is try to break the cycles of abuse. I was abused too at one point in my life much like my friend who did this. But that's no excuse to perpetuate the cycle of abuse. Update 2. Not sure what asshole or Russian bot put a wholesome award on this but I blocked and flagged your ass. Shame on your rots in hell. To everyone else, my god, I have never had a post blow up like this. Thank you all for sharing your stories and kind words. I'm about to call my friend and see how she's doing. In extreme cases of scurvy, your scars break down and old wounds reopen. Collagen keeps scars together and that collagen maintains itself throughout our lives. But without vitamin C, that process begins to halt and the collagen breaks down. Eat your fruits and veggies, folks. The weirdest thing about scurvy is how it's showing up in well-off people. Some modern diets cut out all fruits and vegetables, leading to very low vitamin C. People then start getting weird symptoms, like bleeding gums. There was a guy at my mate's uni who subsisted on nothing but cheese and bacon rolls and cheap cordial for a semester. Went to the doc. Doc took ages to diagnose him, because, naturally, who the fuck gets scurvy in the middle of Brisbane, Australia, in the 21st century? Edit. Yes, I'm well aware of the urban legend. That also doesn't preclude it from happening in real life. If you're telling me that it's an urban myth that uni students have shitty nutrition, well. Plus I met the guy. Scurvy Bob. He fucking hated the name Bob instead of his preferred diminutive Rob, but, let's face it, Bob sounded more 18th century piratical. He was fine with the scurvy bit,